Hello, good morning everyone, and welcome to this info day. My name is Anca Iliac-Kempenu. I'm the head of Unit B4, which deals with the Connecting Europe Facility for Energy and the Renewable Energy Financing Mechanism at the executive agency CINEA. Alongside my colleagues here in the room from DG Ener and from CINEA, I would like to open this info day on the call for the list of cross-border renewable energy projects. This info day will cover the fifth call for cross-border renewable status on the list of cross-border renewable projects that has opened on the 2nd of September and will close on the 5th of February next year. In order to be eligible for the Connecting Europe Facility funding to finance technical studies and works, cross-border renewable projects will have to be selected for the CBRES list. This is how we shorten cross-border renewables, CBRES. In the next slide, you will see the detailed agenda for today. We have a series of very interesting presentations for you, where first we will hear from my colleague Laila on the policy of cross-border renewables. Then I will present shortly the cross-border renewables program and framework. Then Victor will take us through the general criteria for the selection of the projects. Gianluca and Joel will take us through the CBA and the counterfactual setup. We will have, of course, moments of questions and answers with you, so we make sure that everything is well understood. And then after a short break, we will continue with Maria, who will explain the evaluation and overall call planning. Gianluca will come back to explain how to draft a quality proposal. And then we will have our colleague Teresa, who will explain how to submit your proposal via the online portal. And then we end with a final Q&A session. I would like to also remind you that throughout the session today, we have a Slido set up to collect your questions, so you can use the hashtag CBRES in Slido and post your questions. So without further ado, let me pass the floor to my colleague Laila, Deputy Head of Unit of the Unit C1 in DG Ener, dealing with renewables.
Good morning and welcome also from my side. So I will just start by briefly setting in the context of the clean transition objectives, the CBRES project. So CEF and the window for cross-border renewables is framed by the key initiatives of the Commission in the areas of decarbonization and competitiveness. So in 2021, we endorsed the 2050 climate neutrality goal, and it was translated into the targets for 55% emission reduction by 2030 and operationalized by the Fit for 55 package. Then earlier this year, the Commission put forward the Clean Industrial Deal and the Affordable Energy Action Plan with the objectives to lower energy prices and to turn decarbonization into a driver of growth for European industries. Affordable energy is the foundation of competitiveness, and this requires, on the one hand, to speed up the rollout of clean energy and to also accelerate electrification on the demand side, but also complete the internal energy market with physical interconnections. And it also requires using energy more efficiently and cutting dependence on imported fossil fuels. Another key initiative is the REPowerEU plan, which has the objective to accelerate renewables across technologies and sectors in order to replace EU dependency on imported fossil fuels. In this context, the revised Renewable Energy Directive entered into force in 2023. It raises the EU ambition for renewable energy with a new binding target of 42.5% in the final energy demand in 2030, but aiming to reach 45% in line with the increased ambition that was put forward at the time of REPowerEU. The directive also includes concrete measures to speed up the deployment of renewables through streamlining the permitting procedures. Now, this increased ambition can only be achieved with a holistic approach, covering all sectors of the economy and exploring the full potential for renewable energy in Europe, including through stronger cooperation between member states in the area of renewables. The CBRES window of CEF provides member states with a cost-effective option to achieve the EU target, in parallel to the national measures of support for renewables. And it also contributes to increasing security of supply. Besides the contribution to the EU decarbonization objectives, the cross-border projects also have to contribute to a few main objectives which are spelled out in the CEF regulation. They can facilitate the integration of renewables and contribute to the uptake of innovative renewables technologies. In particular, the CBRES project should tap into the potential for offshore wind, but also open up possibilities for cooperation in heating and cooling and solar, and should help building stronger value chains in the area of renewables by adding storage, transmission, and flexibility. The Commission updates the list of CBRES projects every year with the support of CINEA, based on the new applications received and the progress reported by existing projects. 5 new projects will be added to the new list, which will enter into force after a scrutiny period by the European Parliament and Council, in principle in January of next year. Once a project has received the CBRES status, it benefits from higher visibility, increased investor certainty, and strengthened support from EU member states. It is also eligible for CEF Energy funding for studies and works, for which there is still significant budget available for the period 2021 to 2027. And with this, I would give the floor back to Anka to go into more details on the CBRES program in the EU financing framework.
Thanks a lot, Laila, and thanks for the introduction. So just to give you an overview of the CBRES program in the whole framework of EU financing, and to start with the key financial mechanisms for the energy sector that our executive agency, CINEA, manages. You find them on the screen. CINEA manages some key funding programs that deliver against the clean energy transition. The Horizon Europe program allocated 15 billion euros to support research and innovation in renewable energy technologies, energy efficiency, electrification of heating and cooling, and digitalization of the energy system. CEF Energy is financing the better interconnection of energy networks towards a single EU energy market and the clean energy transition. Since 2014, CEF Energy has supported 154 projects with a total of 5.7 billion euros. And the Life Clean Energy Transition Program should also be mentioned, which in May 2022 the Life Clean Energy Transition call for proposals was published, making available 98 billion euros for energy efficiency and clean energy projects. Next to these programs, CINEA manages 2 important programs that are not part of the multi-annual financial framework of the EU, namely the Renewable Energy Financing Mechanism and the Innovation Fund. To have a closer look at the Connecting Europe facility, you see here on the screen the 3 legs of the Connecting Europe facility. It's a program with an overall budget of 71 billion, which covers digital, transport, and energy. For energy, the budget for this multi-annual financial framework was of 5.84 billion euros, and it is split between funding for projects of common interest and projects of mutual interest, the so-called PCIs and PMIs, and cross-border renewable projects, which are the topic for discussion today. The Cross-border Renewable Energy Program aims at supporting projects in the field of renewable energy to enable the cost-effective deployment of renewable energy in a cross-border context. More on the concept of cross-border projects will be explained in the course of the presentations today. And now an overview of the actions that the Connecting Europe Facility for Energy has supported over the years in the 10 years of its existence. I will not read through all the figures, you have them on the screen. Just to highlight that CEF Energy was set up in 2013 on the basis of the TENI regulation, Trans-European Networks for Energy regulation, which was recently revised in 2022 and is a key EU funding instrument in the sector of energy. With the revised TENI regulation fully aligning the policy framework with the European Green Deal, the Connecting Europe Facility for Energy contributes to further develop and interconnect energy networks in Europe and brings a key role to the energy transition. CEF Energy funding supports the transformation of European cross-border energy infrastructure into more resilient, green and digitalized networks necessary to make the EU energy system more interconnected and to contribute to the clean energy transition. The CEF program in the energy sector provides funding to electricity, smart grids, CO2 and natural gas infrastructure projects, as well as with the aim to better interconnect energy networks towards the single energy market in Europe. With the new TENI regulation, the CEF program also covers hydrogen projects and the possibility of financing for natural gas projects has of course been limited to only 2 exceptions. For this, between 2014 and 2025, CEF Energy has supported 220 actions with a total amount of 8 billion euros of support. And the largest share of funding was regards works for projects of common interest in the electricity sector. The Cross-border Renewables Program is growing rapidly. And if we include the 3 actions that are about to sign their grant agreements, the program will count 17 actions with 167.5 million euros of CEF support awarded. Now, a little bit of information about where to find more, let's say, about the Cross-border Renewables Project and its budget. I will not read them out, but you have all the relevant legislation listed on the screen in case you want to have a closer look. In terms of the CBRES process, first we start with the application for status, which is what we are discussing now. Then follows the after the evaluation, of course, the publication of the CBRES list, and the projects with status are then eligible for future calls for works and studies, so for funding. Eligible projects include renewable generation based on renewable energy sources. They cover all sectors: electricity, transport, heating and cooling. They cover storage, IT systems, the grid connection, provided they all form an integral part of the project and effectively enable the integration of the renewable energy and are ancillary to the renewable energy facility. There are no predefined capacity thresholds or locations or technology type. You have on the screen a list of projects that already obtained status. I will go very briefly through them. The ULP renewable project, wind park, will develop an onshore wind park in the northern part of Latvia and the southern part of Estonia, consisting of 33 new generation wind turbines with joint connection to the 330 kV transmission grid in Latvia. Then Görlitz and Großzeleg will invest into renewable heat generation and connect its district heating networks with the cross-border pipeline to jointly supply the European city with climate-neutral district heating. The L-Wind project is an offshore wind project involving Estonia and Latvia with a hybrid grid connection linking, which comprises of an interconnector and transmission lines to connect the two countries. The size of the project is between 700,000 and 1 million kilowatts, and that means 700 to 1,000 megawatts. So that means approximately between 100 and 180 wind turbines. In Cicerone, the core of the project is to build new additional renewable power plants in Italy, Spain and Germany, and then convert the green power produced to green hydrogen or to ammonia. Part of the ammonia will be used for off-takers directly in the Netherlands. The bulk park will be converted to hydrogen and transported to Germany. Slope will produce electricity and hydrogen through offshore wind power plant facilities in the Gulf of Riga on the western side of the island of Kinu in Estonian sea waters. Then there's hydraulic assembly of structures in Turnu Măgurele Nicopol, which represents a major cross-border initiative between Romania and Bulgaria aimed at utilizing the hydropower potential of the Danube River. It envisages the installation of 840 megawatts of new capacity, encompassing the construction of 2 advanced hydropower plants along with an extensive reservoir. Then we have the Bornholm Energy Island project, which you might have seen recently in the news. It's one of the flagship projects in offshore wind development, hybrid offshore wind farm project between Denmark and Germany. And last but not least, Pontis, an integrated industrial-scale cross-border European green hydrogen value chain based on 750 megawatts of additional renewable energy, coupled with 280 megawatts green hydrogen production facility, powered via renewable resources. This renewable hydrogen will be transformed into what? Okay, into green hydrogen by a hydrogeneration process for the exportation to Rotterdam. And we also have some new additions to the list, which you also see on the screen. They are the CBRS projects having just received status in the fourth call. So as you can see, there's an onshore cross-border wind park between Latvia and Lithuania, a cross-border district heating network between Germany and Poland, an offshore project in the Baltic Sea between Latvia and Estonia, an offshore floating wind park between Portugal and Luxembourg, and a solar wind plus battery project in the north of Africa between Italy, Algeria, and Tunisia. The new cross-border renewable list, so following the fourth call for status, is not yet in force. It is currently under the scrutiny period with the Council and the Parliament. So this is upcoming. And then, last but not least of important in my presentation, just to present the transparency platform, which shows It's an online website with a map which shows you the location and a lot of interesting information about all the projects that have received cross-border renewable status and or financing so far. So this is a nice tool also for you to consult in case you would like more information. And now, as I have come to the end of my presentation, let me pass the floor to Victor, who is also from DG ENER, from the Unit C1, and is there in charge of the CBRS program.
Thank you, Anka, and good morning, everyone. So indeed, I will walk you through the general criteria that are set by the CEF regulation to qualify as a CBRS. There are 3 of them. First is that the project has to be included in a cooperation agreement between 2 member states or between a member state and a third country. And a cooperation agreement that is set out in one of the mechanisms of the Renewable Energy Directive, namely statistical transfer, joint projects, or joint support schemes. Second requirement is that you have to demonstrate that your project deliver cost savings in comparison to a counterfactual project. And the third one is to demonstrate that your cooperation project in itself deliver overall benefits from a socio-economic point of view. I will come into the detail of each of them in the next slide, for which I will probably need the pointer. Thanks. Okay. So the cooperation agreements. So you see here the different options from the Renewable Energy Directive. So there are the 4 options. They're not really mutually exclusive. You can actually combine them. In all cases, they achieve the same goal, is that you have a project in the territory of a member state whose energy production counts for the share of renewable energy of another member state. The statistical transfer are perhaps the lowest transaction cost for member states to conclude. You just set up a transaction for a number of megawatt hours at a given price. It's rather straightforward. The joint projects are necessarily attached to an installation. It's actually most of the CBRS applications we receive are under this label. You have member states sharing the benefits and the cost of the installation. That has to be for production of renewable energy, electricity, or heat. It can be that they agree on a transfer price, compare the first mechanism, but they can also have a pro rata approach depending on how much the contributing member states chip into the support cost of the installation. We expect actually multiplication of applications under Article 9 because the Renewable Energy Directive, you see it's read too, but there was actually a third version because the directive was amended in 2023, and there's an obligation for member states by the end of this year to establish a framework for cooperation under joint projects and to endeavor to conclude such joint projects by 2030. And there's an extra obligation for member states where the electricity consumption is above 100 terawatt-hour to conclude a third one by 2033. So of course the CBRS program comes as a welcome financial tool to support these initiatives. You may also have the case of a member state developing a joint project with a third country. There are extra requirements that are set out by the Article 11 of the Renewable Energy Directive. Namely, they are restricted to electricity production, and you have to have physical link between the third country and the EU. The electricity basically has to be consumed in the EU. It has to be related to a new installation or an installation that was eventually refurbished, but after 2009, and that installation should not be benefiting from any type of support for electricity generation. It may benefit from an investment support, but not from an operating support, if you will. And the third country must be also a signatory of the Council of Europe Convention for Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. And the last option is more complex to establish. It's either to have joint or partly coordination of national support schemes. It's actually quite relevant if your CBRS application entails multiple installations. So more complex to set up, but if you're looking for a more long-term cooperation between member states, that's actually a more long-term goal, I would say. Just to give you an example of what kind of project setup, it's illustrative. It doesn't have to be one or the other, can be others type, but like on the left-hand side, you see the ULP RES wind park. It's a wind park that spans across the border of Estonia and Latvia, and it has the grid connection in Latvia, but the two member states will actually share the statistical benefits at the pro rata of the number of turbines that are installed in their territory. On the right-hand side, it's the Saare Liivi offshore wind farm, which is located in the Gulf of Riga in the Estonian coastal waters, and it will be subject to a transfer agreement between Estonia and the state of Luxembourg in the future. So it's more virtual setup, if you will. You don't have necessarily to have a physical link between the member states that are sponsoring, supporting your projects. The second requirement, counterfactual, and actually the third, I will fly over them, if you will, because Gianluca and Joel will go into the details of it, but just to say that basically you have to provide an analysis that compare your projects to a counterfactual, an hypothetical similar project. Typically, in the standard case, that would be a project that would be located in the member states that is not hosting the installation. So, for instance, if I take the previous example, that would be the state of Luxembourg. What would be the alternative for them of not signing a transfer agreement for an offshore wind farm in Estonia and develop domestic renewable energy production? You have to make sure that I think your CBA is based on also the EU reference scenario. The latest iteration is from 2020. We commission currently updating the scenario, but it's not released yet. The cost-benefit analysis. So you have 7 indicators that are provided for in the annex of the CEF regulation, and each of the indicators is further explained by a staff working document. Not all indicators are quantitative indicators. You have also more qualitative ones related, for instance, to innovation. It's just to say that, of course, this is not a cost-benefit allocation mechanism for member states. So it's really just to demonstrate that your project has a positive net present value. And yeah, you still need to have member states settling on how they support the cost and how they share the benefits of the installation. The last slide is, I would say, something to keep in mind as you submit CBRS application for future funding. We have rules when it comes to what type of components and technology are eligible for funding if you secure the CBRS status. And we will expect clarity on the technical scope in your applications. So, of course, any type of renewable energy is eligible. We're not discarding, it's not exclusive to wind or solar, for instance. It can be geothermal, it can be ocean energy, hydropower, etc., as long as you are listed in the definition of the directive, of the Renewable Energy Directive. And also, in addition, your installation, your project may feature some non-renewable energy components. It was mentioned by Hanka. They have to form an integral part of the project, enable integration and answer to RES. What does that mean? That means if you're facilitating the integration means without them, the operation of the project will actually utilize the rest potential of the installation in a suboptimal manner. Integral part of the projects, meaning they're not artificially added, if you will, to the project. They're really consistent with the entire project setup. And ancillary, well, the main purpose of the CBRS project is the generation of renewable energy. So this non-renewable energy component should really serve that main purpose. There are a list of examples in the call text that you can find. Those are developed also to avoid any overlaps between other windows of the CEF program, such as the PCI PMI window that also has, for instance, storage assets as eligible for funding. And keep in mind that next to the CBRS list, which is taking the form of a delegated act, the Commission also published a technical documentation that for each project selected explains which technical components are eligible for future funding. And I will leave that presentation here.
Thanks a lot, Victor. And now, without further ado, let me pass the floor to Gianluca and to Joel to take us further through the presentation.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anka, and colleagues. And we will try to walk through the 7 elements of the CBA and also the tools, how it works, especially the Excel tool that you find for download from the call page. So, as Victor said, there are certain elements that are quantifiable, 5 out of 7. The other 2 we'll see how it works. They don't enter into the calculation of the CBA itself, and we'll look at it in a moment. So the first element that you find in the staff working document, and also the CEF regulation annex, it's about the cost of energy. So it's really how much that will it cost to produce the energy from the renewable energy sources in the project, and what if the project would not take place, so in the counterfactual. The staff working document provide a clear formula there. So it's really about the levelized cost of energy, where it's factored in investment cost, operation and maintenance cost, and it's also factored in the discount rate in the formula. So the formula is quite straightforward. The typical, we are now through several calls, and we have seen, let's say, the typical problem we might find in application is that calculations are not so explicit. So often we don't know exactly, or the evaluators, they find that the source from the calculation was not explicitated. So it's sometimes difficult to understand the starting ground, basically. So please be as transparent as possible there. Whether these costs you calculated are cost from the sector average, for example, if you don't have project-specific estimates, is it an estimate on the project? Did you do a study before that? Sometimes you were able to do feasibility study or other type of studies to on the sites, on the project specific there. So really be as clear, as transparent, and traceable as possible. And specify the total cost of the energy, so as it is explained in the staff working document, so be clear on your P50, for example. On the second element, it focuses on the system integration cost. So you will find basically 3 main elements, or sub-element, if you like. The first one is the profiling cost. So it's about the cost providing backup capacity and flexibility to meet the demand at peak time. Notably, the balancing cost, it covers the fluctuations that are very much linked to renewable sources and the uncertainty that this leads to the grid. And then the grid-related cost is the third element, which is normally charges basically to connect. Yeah, we have some advice there for the profile cost. Often it's really about estimate based on the system operator projection or a proxy of it, like the LCOE of a marginal peak in hour. Whatever is your basis of calculation, also there it's important to simply state it and clearly explain whether you have received, for example, estimates from the grid operator in the area. Same consideration for the balancing cost. Can be system operator projection if you received it, or if they are known, or historical data. So also there, whichever you prefer, if ever you have access to, just make explicit what is your basis for the calculation. And then the grid connection cost, yeah, normally refers really to the charges and the network general charges. These are often a little bit more easy to access. So the cost of support, it's one of those labeled not entering in the calculation of the CBA. It's a quantifiable element, but it doesn't enter in the calculation itself. So basically, the element focuses on trying to clarify what would be the public funding, but also the private funding. So what would be the source of funding, basically? And the idea is to, well, in the CBRS project will be probably will include a certain share of CEF support that you will think to access or will ask to access, and the counterfactual will be without CBRS support or CEF support. Will be other sources in the share of the in the mix of the financing. So it should be calculated in euro, but will not enter in the CBA calculation. So there is really to understand what is the business plan at this stage, and we know that when project apply for status, there is a different level of maturity. Some are very mature and very close to the FID or even the construction. Others are much farther away, and so it might be this element in particular might be quite of a rough estimate. The fourth element of the CBA, as explained in the staff working document, is the greenhouse gas emission avoidance, and there the idea is to try to capture what is the benefit of the CBRS project in terms of reduced greenhouse gas emission. The staff working document details what should be counting in this. In this group of element, and the idea is to establish the GSG emission in CO2 equivalent and monetize it. It can be monetized by the cost of carbon estimates, and there are references in the staff working documents to be used. And if you decide to deviate from that method, which can happen for whichever reason, we'll try to be as transparent as possible. So explain what is your basis, why you deviated, why you found alternative data more suitable to your project, and this is obviously an option for each of the elements before, but it needs to be very clear, and obviously you have to have a strong case. Point of attention there from the staff working document is to use the global warming potential factors to express the GSG effect in CO2 equivalent term, and reference also to the 6th assessment report of the IPCC. So that's let's say the encouraged method, but as I said, you may deviate if it is justified and clarified and transparent. Don't add on top of this of your calculation the discount rate of the project, because this is automatically applied by the tool, and Joël will walk you through in a moment. So really to be clear in the GSG emission, because it's often a source of mistake, the idea of this element is to calculate the emission saving of the project and its difference with a counterfactual project. So in the case of CBRS project, it will be the difference between the CBRS project emission and the emission of the equivalent project based on the country-specific electricity emission factor in the country where the project would take place. Whereas when we talk about the counterfactual, it's the same type of calculation, but compared to the country of the contributing country. This in the scenario where clearly the contributing and the hosting country are clearly separated. For project crossing the border, of course, it's a little bit more tricky, and you may need to take a slightly different approach. The security of supply is the fifth element, and it's usually in the CBRS would be a positive element because the idea there is to capture how much is the value of the change of the energy imports. And it's assumed that what is produced by the renewable energy sources locally will, in a way, substitute the importing. So there are usually CBRS projects have a positive value, and this will be also, as for all the other elements, will be compared to a counterfactual project. So how much in terms of euro equivalent are the import lowered by the energy output of the project? So assuming that the whole quantity of the project will be consumed domestically in the hosting country then. The sixth quantifiable element is the air and local pollution. Again, here it's a little bit like for the GHG. We are trying to capture in the methodology the how much reduction of air and other local pollutant would be generated in a way by the fact that there will be a CBRS project compared to the scenario where no CBRS project would take place. The polluters, they are detailed in the methodology and listed in bullet point 1 of this slide. So NOx, PMX, and SO2. So not all the pollutant. And also there the methodology suggests how to do it using established emission factors of this pollutant and then multiplying the decrease of emission by the economic unit cost of each pollutant. Is also there are methods to monetize in euro those costs. So here the project should try to capture what are the benefits of the project in terms of reduced air and local pollution compared to a situation where the project would not take place as a CBRS setup. And then the innovation is the last of the 7 elements, and here clearly it's not about monetizing or quantifying innovation. It has to be understood in a broad sense. So it can be about technological innovation. We have seen some new technology or not so new, but also in development phase, like offshore floating wind, but marine technology, for example. This is the type of innovation technology that are quite, quite innovative and not yet used on a large scale. But it could be also a policy innovation where, thanks to the project, you would overcome some barrier for cooperation. You can look at the setup of the project, and you can look at it from a technological innovation or other type of innovation, governance innovation. And I think that it really depends on the project. So it's an important factor, especially when a project is so it's a breakthrough, and sometimes the quantitative element might not be as favorable, at least not in the first run. So there the innovation plays a big role. So about the counterfactual, it's something that is explained also at length in the staff working document. And we have also FAQ document in the page of the call, so don't hesitate to download it. And there are a number of questions there on the counterfactual and answers. So really the idea on the counterfactual is to compare the project, so the CBRS project, to a project that would take place without the cooperation. So the cooperation triggers normally a project that wouldn't be exactly the same in a way. So it can be either a completely different project, like a specific counterfactual. So like in the case that Victor was quoting before, where a cooperation is taking place between Estonia and Luxembourg. In that case, a counterfactual could have been a project taking place in Luxembourg. And if we talk about offshore project, obviously Luxembourg has no access to the sea. So in that case, it would have been a project-specific counterfactual because the technology would have been different. I just quote this example as it's kind of straightforward, but it can be many type of setup, of course. This is a case-specific counterfactual where you cannot possibly realistically do the same project without cooperation because simply you don't have access to that technology. That can be one typology, of course. It's not the only reason to go for a case-specific counterfactual. There might be other. For the standardized counterfactual is obviously the preferred option because it's much easier to compare with the CBRS project. And there we look into the same project setup or very similar, comparing the same technology, offshore wind, or solar PV with solar PV, or a mix of the two and a mix of the two. So the same technology setup. Of course, there might be some differences. For example, you might not realistically have a scenario of a counterfactual that has exactly the same size. It might be a smaller project, for example. And usually a standardized counterfactual project would take place in the contributing country. So when you have a CBRS project taking place in country A and contributing country B, in that case, well, if the country B has access to the same technology, well, it would be an easy, a very natural solution to go for a standardized counterfactual where country B, in the counterfactual, the project would take place in country B with the same technology and to be seen eventually with the same size. So that's the idea. And the idea to have a counterfactual that is constantly compared to the project and CBA is to capture, let's say, the added value of the cooperation and the need for a cooperation. So normally a CBRS project would have a globally higher benefit or lower cost or the two, a combination of the two, compared to a counterfactual project. So that's the logic, and then we'll dig a little bit how it works exactly. There is a CBA tool for download in the program core website, and Joël will guide you, walk you through.
Thank you, Gianluca. Good morning, everyone. I will now discuss a little bit more in detail about the CBA tool. So, as Gianluca explained, it's an Excel file available for applicants. So what it is, the CBA tool allows to capture and quantify the different CBA elements. It's a model. It allows to perform a financial and economic analysis of the project submitted. It's a way to demonstrate the project benefits, and it improves actually the investment decision making. So far, there have been some lessons learned. We have observed some recurrent CBA that are of suboptimal quality. It's important to remind that in financial investment analysis, when we have a bad project, but with good financial economic modeling, well, we reject the project because the project is not correct. If we have a bad project and we cannot also assess it because the modeling is incorrect, of course, that's even worse, so we will reject the project. If we have a good project that is well presented, so with good financial economic modeling, we will accept the project. But if we observe, for example, a good project, but it's poorly presented, then we are forced to reject a good project. So in other words, it means that poor financial economic modeling skills, it's a decision-making risk. What we have observed so far is that applicants face various challenges when working on the model. They have sometimes a lack of model understanding. We have also observed some calculation errors. And also, in particular, the counterfactual analysis is sometimes inconsistent or incorrect. So what we have decided is to improve the model, to increase clarity, and reduce the risk of potential errors. If we focus on the CBA tool, we have performed different improvements. The first one is that now there are more explanations within the model. So we explain how the model works, and we have also rephrased some explanations, some instructions. So you can observe in the Excel sheets just text explaining what the applicant must perform. Then also we have improved the transparency of the CBA tool. So the Excel sheets now are, for example, visible. All the sheets are visible. For some sheets, the formulas are protected, but an applicant can observe and understand what is being calculated. And we have clearly explained which Excel sheets are protected and which ones are not. An important update also is that now for the financial flows, we indicate that they must not be discounted because it's done automatically in the model. So no need to perform complex calculations with their potential risk. If we focus a little bit more deeper on the Excel sheet, we have different calculation tabs. So for example, the sheet Calc CBA, it contains the cash flow statement for the entire project duration, along with the counterfactual monetized indicator, but it's without discounting. Then we have the Calc CBA disc. Disc stands for discounting, so it's exactly the same thing as before, but now it's discounted. The discounting reflects the time value adjustments. We have the output also, that's another Excel sheet, which it provides a view of the key results of the CBA calculation discounted, from the previous slide that I was explaining. Then we have the calculator in check. This is a control for the cash flow statements, and we verify the integrity and consistency of the calculation. And then we have the calc identifier sheet, which actually explains the different variables of the model, the calculations, and ensure that they are only performed in a very specific way. If we go back on how the CBA tool works more specifically, we have also a third improvement, and is that we have created controls and checks. So we have a worksheet, check and control CBA, where we have implemented 50 controls. These help the applicant to self-assessing the quality of their models. The controls are not binding or blocking, so if there is an error, the model will not bug, will not be blocked. However, it allows the applicant to increase its own assurance, to understand what is going on. We have categorized the controls in either as critical or non-critical. If they are non-critical, it might be a typo. So taken by isolation, it doesn't indicate a significant flaw in the model. However, in contrast, we have, for example, the critical ones, and here caution is advised, as it may indicate potential issues with the model setup, or that there are model pitfalls. As a fourth improvement, we also have more instructions, so we have a better touch and feel. Applicants know where calculations should be performed and in which cell the model inputs must be filled in. We have also instruction boxes where we explain what we are calculating, so if the applicant feels a little bit lost, they have some guidance. Here I will focus a little bit on the checks I was explaining before. So for example, we have an example of a non-critical check. We explain, if you check the line, so we have the type of control check. It might be of completeness or also on consistency. Then we have a description. We explain what this control is performing, the formula, so for more transparency, so that the applicant can understand what is being checked. Then we explain either if it's critical or not. So if it's not critical, it means can the evaluator still draw conclusions? So for me, for example, a project where the output is non-critical, I will just check to understand the problem, but normally in isolation, it shouldn't be a problem. And then we have the result, either it's true, either it's false. And the applicant can, because of that, understand what is going on and improve the model during the application process. Before the submission of the proposal. Here in illustration 2, we have, for example, a check that is critical. Here, for example, it's consistency. It indicates that the counterfactual net present value is actually inferior to the project. That would be a problem, because here it will be, it means that the model is more profitable than the counterfactual. If this is not true, result is false, it means that the model contains significant errors, or that the project may have inconsistencies, because it wouldn't make sense to submit a project of these characteristics. So that the critical is yes, and here we suggest the applicant to really investigate the issue and to understand either if it's an error of calculation or if it's just the setup of the project. I will focus a little bit more now on the counterfactual, as this is really important in the submission of these proposals. We have embedded directly in the model a set of specific controls to confirm that the counterfactual is correctly set. For some applications, we have observed that the counterfactual weren't correctly set. This is a critical error, and us as financial engineer, we had to recreate or imagine a correct counterfactual, what a correct counterfactual could have been. That is not an optimal solution. So what we have done is this preliminary counterfactual check, where actually we allow the applicant to already self-assess if it's correctly set. So for example, here we have already two problems. We say that the project, the primary technology of the project is solar. The primary technology of the counterfactual is solar, but we indicate that the host country and the country of the counterfactual is the same country. And we say that it's standardized. If we check on the left, we observe that this doesn't follow the instructions of what is a correct counterfactual. So we have integrated in the model the capacity by the applicant to really verify that he has correctly set everything. Here we can observe that a correct model would be, we have a different, since it's case specific, we have different technologies, and of course always with the same, with different member states. So here what I was trying to explain, that a correct model integrated correctly would be having a case specific. If we say that, if we declare that the project is case specific, we should have different technologies in different member states. And then the conclusion would be counterfactual correctly stated. The applicant has a little bit more assurance that what he's submitting is correct, makes sense. Now I think it's the question and answer session, so I give the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. So lots of details and technical aspect as well on the CBA. You had walked through also on the main requirements of the CBRS program and the specific code requirement. So it's also good time to digest and see whether you have some burning questions already at this stage. So we can open the Q&A, and we can leave it open for the next few minutes and see if you have some questions so far. Just to remind you that in the call page you can find all the templates, and also the elements that Victor was explaining before about what is eligible for the call in terms of besides the renewable energy generation. There are some also non-renewable energy regeneration elements, and here there are some restrictions. So please have a look at the call text, because there it's quite important to frame your project correctly from the start, in order typically to avoid overlapping with other instruments such as the PCI, call-ins under CEF Energy, and other possible EU funds. So if you have questions, reminder about, you can see on the screen the hashtag CEF Energy CBRS, and don't hesitate to post it. We'll leave it open for the next few minutes. Okay. The first brave one with the question. So the first question is about maturity. Can a project that is still in early stage of maturity apply for this status goal? Yeah, the short answer is yes. Depends. However, what do you mean of maturity, of course, and what is early maturity? You have to have sufficient data to set up your CBA. So you have to be able to gather the data about the 7 elements. This is the critical aspect, so that you have sufficiently robust element to set up a credible cost-benefit analysis, and a sufficient amount of element regarding the project setup, so possible location, technology, cost, wider context in terms of market, let's say project financing elements. So all of that should be available, knowing that any of those elements can evolve over time, especially if your project is it's in the early stage of the maturity. And if you look at the CBRS transparency platform, you will see that there are different stage, projects are at different stage of maturity as well, also those who are already in the list. So you have projects that arrived in the CBRS family, so to say, where they were very close to an FID decision, final investment decision. Other who need much more time for reasons specific to the project, to the size and type of challenges. So yes, there can be different level of maturity. Early stage of maturity, yes, but it should be sufficiently mature to be able to set up a cost-benefit analysis and provide elements on the project setup, location, etc. Knowing that project can evolve, the way it works, one project are, if a project is selected for CBRS status and entering the list, every year there is a reporting and project needs to update on the implementation, and there might be updates on the location, for example. The exact location might change a little bit, even the technology mix, sometimes the capacity, maximum capacity installed. So these are all elements that can evolve. When there are evolution over time during the reporting, an important factor is to double check whether the project still has all the elements to be eligible as a CBRS project. So basically the fundamental elements or reasons why the project was selected would not be put into question with those elements. So the CBA is still there, even if there is an evolution in the calculation and so on and so forth. So there can be evolution, and this is particularly relevant for projects that are more, a bit earlier in their maturity phase. Yeah, so the presentation, you will receive it, and I think you will receive also a link for a satisfaction survey for the event itself. So you will receive the presentation. We will also upload it in the website. Also the recording will be available. Yeah, whether it will be possible to organize one-to-one meeting to clarify questions? No, that's not possible, because it would break the equal treatment approach. During an open call, we cannot meet bilaterally project, but you are more than welcome to, after the info day, send questions if they are not covered by this presentation, if they are not clarified in the documents that are available online, notably the Q&A. I mean, the Q&A question document compiles more than 100 questions, so you might likely find out the answer there, but if you don't, you are very welcome to get in touch, write us an email, and if your question is not covered by any of the available document online, we will update the Q&A document as well, so everybody can have the same level of information. What we cannot do, even in this in the event you send us questions, is to answer to very project-specific questions that would give you an advantage compared to other projects. But But anything that can be generalized, so to say, so an element that is useful for any potential applicant, we will be able to reply. So would it be legally possible for an integrated project with offshore generation and hybrid interconnector to get both CBRS and PCI status and funding? So what is important is to clearly separate the two projects. If you apply for a CBRS status and you have in mind a hybrid interconnector, part of the concept, is good that we know the whole picture. But what will enter, in case of selection, what will enter into the CBRS would be the part that is very much linked to the components that are eligible in the call text, whereas the parts that are not eligible, typically, an interconnector, for example, is not eligible for funding for CBRS. That part would eventually go in a PCI should the project apply for PCI status and be selected. So the string should be separated, but the same global project could indeed be part of a PCI and a CBRS leg, provided that clearly the two elements are separated, even though they make a global picture, so to say, in the reality. So in principle it is possible, but really pay attention to this clear delineation of what you are looking for in one leg or the other, especially when you will come for funding, clearly. So is it possible for SME to apply and with the support of 2 member states? So there are 2 elements here. So the type of applicants and who is supporting the project. So the cooperation mechanism, future cooperation mechanism, is a remit of the member state. So at some point, member state will have to sign a cooperation mechanism. So that's one thing. But the promoter itself of a CBRS project doesn't have to be a member state. It can be another entity, and it can be a private entity. Within the private entity, there's no restriction of typology. It can be any private entity based in the EU, and there it can be also an SME. Now, in real term, you have to see what type of project you're looking for, because often SMEs are potentially maybe too small size, but we have to see on the specific case. But if you deem that is possible, and indeed, as Anka was saying before in our part, there's no threshold. So in principle, there's a minimum size of a project to apply for a CBRS project. Then indeed, an SME could potentially apply. Now you have to see whether this is something feasible compared to what are the requirements in terms of cost benefit analysis, notably. So far, I'm not aware of SMEs being a promoter, but it's legally possible. Again, there probably to really have an understanding of what are the type of projects, it's really it's a good approach to go to the CBRS transparency platform, because there you see smaller project and bigger one. The smallest we have, it runs from let's say 10, 20 megawatt, really the smallest, and going up to gigawatt size. So to have an understanding. But again, as I said, legally there's no threshold for that. Yeah, so I think this is linked to the previous question, that what I said about CBRS and PCI applies also the same for PMI. So in case a project, CBRS project, has a cooperation or forcing to have a cooperation with a third country, and it may have a PMI leg potentially. Again, the 2 calls and the 2 instruments, they have specific restriction or conditions, if you like, and when it comes to the CBRS, there are specific restriction linked to project with third country that Victor was explaining in the first part, notably on the fact that electricity must be consumed in the EU. So if we are talking about an electricity project we are looking for a project that has a physical connection or will have a physical connection with the EU. That's the condition in this CBRS. Not talking PMI, really talking about CBRS. So for CBRS found, only CBRS status is enough, or is it necessary PCI, PMI? Yeah, conversely, it's also possible. So you can apply also, and that's the typical actually case where you apply only for CBRS status and do not apply for PMI, PCI, PMI. So yes, you can actually apply just for the CBRS, and notably if a project is really focused on has only a renewable energy generation and eventually some additional components that are fitting into the requirement of CBRS, this is perfectly possible. Okay, is it possible to obtain funding CBRS status for an existing cross-border district heating network if a new geothermal drilling is required? So maybe to generalize a bit, in case there is an existing cross-border heating network and you want to have a new installation of renewable energy generation, be it geothermal in this case, be it anything else, that's possible to apply for CBRS. Provided that there is really the main condition for CBRS when we talk about elements is to have additional new renewable energy capacity, or in some very specific case refurbishment, as it was mentioned in previous presentation. But the typical case is where you foreseen to have new renewable energy installation. So in this case, when you have a cross-border district heating network existing and you want to add new renewable energy installation, the CBRS project, I mean the overall project will encompass the whole picture. So you will explain an existing network, but the focus and the part that eventually would be eligible for funding later on, if the project is selected, is really the renewable energy generation part, be it geothermal, be it anything else that is eligible, that is considered renewable energy sources in the renewable directive as amended recently. Okay, can transmission project connecting new generation interconnector apply without the generation part, or does the generation needs to be part of the project? So this is a typical scenario that wouldn't be eligible in CBRS status. It should be the other way around, basically. So the transmission part would be out of the scope of the CBRS, and the generation part, the new generation part, will be part of the scope of the CBRS. Then, where needed, where it would make sense, you may apply for the transmission part under the PCI PMI or elsewhere, but it would not be eligible for the CBRS leg. Our project is in the early stage, and we do not yet have the consent of landowners. It's possible to submit the project. So yes, this is linked to the maturity phase, and it is often the case, especially for projects that are indeed in the early stage. Usually you don't have consent of landowner, you may not have access to the land, you may not have building permit at that stage, and a grid connection permit. You will probably have to run still quite a few studies, environmental impact assessment where applicable, on-site studies, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, this is one of the elements you may not have at status phase, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah, maybe the advice is, whatever the status is the project, if you're able to set up a robust CBA and describe the project how you intend to have it in the future, and then it's really to provide as much as possible information on the wider context. So if you know you don't have certain element, you simply explain it clearly, and you explain also what you have at that stage. So it is clear what is the stage of maturity, but it's a possibility for a project to apply anyhow at this stage. Okay, more of a policy one.
So just to clarify that a CBRS project should always include a renewable energy component. It can include non-renewable energy components if you can demonstrate that it supports a cost-effective deployment of renewable energy. But the program itself, the CBRS projects intends to be a project that not only increase the share of renewable energy in a member state, but also contribute to the security of supply, for instance. So, yeah.
Thank you, Victor. So another question on the setup: will it be a good idea that the RES component is built in one country, and the other country has only the interconnection? So basically, I would assume in this setup the idea is to have export of the electricity from the country, the hosting country, as we would call it, to the other country that might be the contributing country. In this case, this is a typical setup of a possible CBRS project where the renewable energy is located in one country. So we call it hosting country there, and there's another country that may be the receiving country of the electricity if it is adjacent to the project country, or it might be the receiving country of a future share of a possible statistical transfer if it is a contributing country that is far away, not connected directly. In that case, it's really more about a cooperation based on statistical transfer. And in any event, this is a setup that is possible, and it's quite typical where the hosting country, why to do a CBRS project in this case? Well, typically the hosting country has access to a certain technology. Consider, for example, cases where a country has a coastal line, so has access to marine technology or offshore wind, for example, and the other country has no access to that. So it's a typical case where you can do a project only in the hosting country and not in the contributing country. So yes, this is a setup that is possible. We don't favor necessarily this or another. It depends really on the case, on the business case of the project. So project on the let's say one of the side component or non-directly related to renewable would importing ammonia into the EU from a third country to crack using renewable energy generated by the project in the EU be valid under CBRS scheme. This is, I'm afraid, would not be possible. Especially because of the condition related to the third countries, cooperation with third countries. That's why I was underlining before that in case of third country we need a connection because the electricity is generated that is generated by the third country needs to be consumed in the EU. So in project with third country, it is restricted to electricity. And in this case. It is not about importing electricity, it's about importing, let's say, a bioproduct like ammonia, or it can be anything else like green hydrogen, and with third country, it wouldn't work. Can a third country such as EU accession candidate like Ukraine apply for the CBRS, and what are the conditions or eligibility criteria? Yes, it can in a setup of a cooperation with a country. So any third country can apply for CBRS status. In that case, we are talking about the same condition as the others. So no specific restriction other than what I just said before. So it's a possibility. Okay, good. So far we have no more question. We can take a break. We had a good round of questions. You can continue to post your question during the break, and if we see that there have been some questions related to the first section, we can, after the break, go through them before we start with the presentation. We're a bit earlier in the schedule. I think we can start again at 11. 10 minutes break and start at 11 with the second part. And yeah, stay with us in a moment, take a break, and if you have questions, don't hesitate to post them on Slido. In the second part, we will really go into the details of the submission process and the call setup, the platform, and how to properly draft a good project. So we will have practical tips for you. So see you in 10 minutes. All right, welcome back. So as said, yeah, we have some more questions during the break, so we'll go through because it's very, I guess most are very much linked to the first part. So we will go through the the pending ones before we start with the second part of presentation. And then when we start with the presentation, you still have questions, either related to the second part or the first part of the info day, don't hesitate. We have also a final Q&A session, so we can go through and so go back eventually to any of the topic of the first part. So we have a question on the cooperation agreement. What is the basis of a cooperation agreement if the promoter is an SME, and is the agreement's basis is the member state government support for a private project? So yeah, so the cooperation agreement should ideally include a series of elements that are also listed in the staff working document, and there we make reference to roughly, I mean, in a nutshell, you should have what are the cost benefits, cost sharing, if there is about if there are elements about the renewable energy statistic, how the member state will intend to distribute them. So high-level statement on the way the renewable energy will be accounting, and so the distribution of statistics, distribution of costs and benefits, and how it will be monitored and verified. This all set up. Now, this on top of the key elements of the project. So, what is the expected capacity, the eligible technology, and the steps to be taken to reach this cooperation agreement. But indeed, the cooperation agreement will be set up, will have to express its support for a specific project, and if the project is a private promoter, it will express the support for the private promoter. Now, obviously, when it's a private promoter or a public promoter, the type of involvement of the member states will be different. Nonetheless, we should have indeed the support of the two or more member states that are involved in the project. At the stage of the status, you will see, so during this call, you either have this fully fledged cooperation agreement, or you have you need to receive a declaration from the participating member states that they support the project and they are willing to enter into a future cooperation agreement. So if you are not yet there with the cooperation agreement, because that takes time, and indeed linking to the maturity stage is often at later stage that a project receives a full cooperation agreement, but at least you should have letters from the participating countries, so both hosting and contributing, expressing the willingness to enter into a future cooperation agreement and supporting the project. What is the maximum size? Can the project finance construction of a 500 megawatt of wind? There's no maximum size, as we were explaining, so no minimum, no maximum. You will see in the currently supported project or projects that are currently in the CBRS list, you have projects that span from let's say 10, 20, 30 megawatt to potentially 2-3 gigawatt project. So it's a very, very wide range. Whether we can finance, whether the CBRF call for works and studies can finance the construction of a given project, that really depends on the condition related to the works and study call. And if you want to see a little bit what are the main elements, you can look at the funding and tender portal, and all past calls are available. It's important to keep in mind, of course, there are two key elements. Now I'm a little bit, let's say, exiting from the specific call for status, but just in case you're not aware of CEF Energy calls, there are two very important elements if you want to apply for works. Is that first of all that CEF is the last resort, so it's not the first possible option of financing. You need to demonstrate that you can access to any other finance. And the second for works is that the non-commercial viability. So CEF finances only the gap that the project needs on terms of financing from the non-commercially to a commercially viable project. So we'll never finance typically a full construction of a full works construction of a 500 or not even 50 megawatts in general. What is the definition of cooperation between member states? Does the member state have to be economical, technically involved in the project? Is it okay with the support letters? As I said, it can vary. Member state can be in the first line if it is a public-led project where the member states or the public authority linked to the member state, being development agencies or other type of organization directly lead the project and, for example, carry out the first part of the project in terms of studies, permitting, etc. Or it could be simply a more support indeed, but with what I said before about the elements on the cooperation. So the member state will have to agree what are the steps to enter into such a cooperation mechanism. Sometimes the member state has a role to enable the condition. Typically, for example, in some situation there might be an evolution necessary in terms of legislation from the two member states allowing such kind of project to exist. So it depends. The role of member state can vary, but they don't have to be involved in the technical aspect at all costs. It really depends on the project setup. CEF risk funding can take place for conversion asset so as to give bioproduct. Integration with PCI, synergy power with RES hydrogen assets. It is linked to what I said before about ammonia, and that was a specific case, but that counts also in general. You have to factor that out. So the key elements is the RES generation. So now if it is a project of cooperation between two member states, a bioproduct such as renewable hydrogen can be part of the project setup. But the focus of the CBRES project is really on the RES generation, and the rest have to be in line with the requirement of the delegated act on CBRES, which is that those components need to enable the integration of the project renewable asset, be ancillary, and therefore be completely integrated to the project and necessary for the renewable generation asset. Yeah, I think that's similar to a previous question. So whether it is possible to have a host country, a facility in a specific host country, like wind onshore project, to export the electricity to the other country, and the other country does not build the renewable component, and that's indeed a possibility in one of the typology of a CBRS project setup. Yeah, so here is a similar case, but where the other participating country is located far away and use interconnector of the TSO. Yes, it can even be so far away that, I mean, you can possibly realistically consider exporting energy if you are adjacent. If you are not adjacent country, then in that case, realistically, you will have rather a cooperation that is based on statistical transfer. So, but the other participating country would would participate, for example, financially in the setup of in the financing of the project, and according to a cooperation agreement, will receive part of the statistics produced by the project once the project will be commissioned. Yeah, okay. Then we went through all the questions, and that means that we can go through the second part of the info day with Maria explaining the evaluation process, selection criteria, and call planning.
Okay, thank you. So building upon the presentations that have been made so far, I will be walking you through what happens after the call closes. So the evaluation process, the selection criteria, and the indicative time frame for the next steps. So in practical terms, the CBRS evaluation and selection process is based on the legislative documents that have been previously mentioned, and I really encourage you to go through the CEF regulation and the delegated act. So these provisions are applied for the evaluation and the selection process, and in general it can be divided into 3 phases. The preliminary checks, so this means that you have submitted, the call have ended, you have submitted, and we are performing the admissibility and eligibility checks. The next phase is the evaluation based on the technical input, and finally the adoption of the final list where the CBRS status stamp is given to the selected projects. So for the preliminary checks, admissibility checks, what is important is for your application to be submitted before the call closure and only via the submission platform. It should be complete, and by this we mean that all the mandatory documents should have been uploaded, and also the online part of the application should have been properly filled in. The documents that have been uploaded should be readable, accessible, and printable, so no corrupted files, etc. Drafted in one of the official EU languages, and the mandatory templates should be used. This is important because if it's not possible to comply with these provisions, then inadmissibility may be the result for an application. So the application is complete, as I mentioned, when the annexes, the mandatory annexes, are provided. There are 4 annexes that you can find links for the templates in the call webpage, which has been shared and will be shared as well in the future. First of all, the annex number 1 is the CBRS tool that my colleagues have very well explained in the previous presentation. Then it's the application form and the CBA report, the written declaration of the participating countries or the cooperation agreement, as it was mentioned, depending on the status of the cooperation agreement or the setup. And finally, Annex 4 concerns the sustainability and do no significant harm compliance file that the proposals should provide. For the eligibility conditions, first of all, except for the eligibility of the projects, what is also checked is the eligibility of the applicants, whether in the form of a beneficiary or affiliated entity. So the applicants to be eligible should be legal entities, could be public or private bodies, for example, natural persons, etc., are not eligible applicants, and should be established in one of the eligible countries. First of all, in the case of EU member states, keep in mind that overseas countries and territories are also included. For the case of non-EU countries, as it was previously mentioned, the project should involve a physical link to an EU member state. For the selection criteria, the cooperation mechanism is central, as it was previously explained as well. So there should be the cooperation agreement or a written declaration of the participating member states or third countries. There is a recommended template to be used for this written declaration. and you can find more details about it should be signed by, etc., and which member states should sign or should be included in the written declaration. And another important selection criterion, which was also mentioned multiple times, it's that the project should be focused on renewable energy generation. There are some project types and eligible technologies that are mentioned in the directive that I also encourage you to consult. And also there could be additional components, as my colleagues mentioned earlier, but these cannot be standalone elements, but they should form integral part of the project, and there should be enablers of integration and ancillary to the RES generation project, which is the core point of the proposed project. Then, as I mentioned, the second phase after admissibility eligibility completes is the technical evaluation. And what is being assessed is the technical soundness of the project. So from a technical point of view, it should be realistic, implementable, mature, etc. And also in line with any technical rules and regulations. At the second level is the soundness of the cost-benefit analysis. So a good CBA, both for the project and for the counterfactual. And also, in addition to the analysis of the net present value, the quantified information, there should be also qualitative information provided, factored in the analysis, and this is also something that will also be assessed during the technical evaluation. And here is an overview of the indicative timeline for this CBRES status call. So the call opened on the 2nd of September. It is open until the 5th of February 2026. And then the evaluation period starts, as I briefly described in the previous slides, indicatively around March, April 2026. After the evaluation period is concluded, the letters of the results to the applicants will be sent during the summer of 2026. And finally, the CBRES list for 2026 is expected to enter into force during the fall of 2026. So this timeline concerns the current CBRES status call. And I would also like to give you a brief overview of what happens after the CBRES list 2026 enters into force. It's that around fall 2026, and this, please keep in mind that these dates are indicative, and you will always be informed through the channels provided like CINEA, etc., and DGNR channels for the most up-to-date information. The call for the works and studies will be launched, is expected to be launched. And finally, going through a similar project, but for applications for works and studies, not for the status. Around April, May 2027, it is expected that the results of the works and studies will be finalized, and the new projects will be accepted and start being co-funded by the window. And this is my presentation. It came to an end, and I pass the floor to Gianluca, who will present how to draft a good proposal, which is a very important aspect of your application. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Maria, for this overview. It's good also to see the longer-term perspective, so you can plan well in advance and see when the CBRF calls can happen and be a support to your project. So this part of the presentation, take it as a sort of a compendium of many of the elements we have seen over the previous presentation on what are the do's and don'ts, so to say. The first element, I mean, there have been many questions on that. It's the cooperation agreement or the declaration from the supporting country. It is, let's say, the main reason for an ineligible project. We have so far likely quite a low rate of ineligibility, but if there is a reason, often that is the case. So if you haven't started yet and you don't have contacts with the countries involved, there is in the CBRS page of the program. So CINEA webpage, the contact points in member states. So it's a list of contact points that is regularly updated, and they can help you to reach out the right channel in the respective member states. So please do get in touch with them. And even in case you have already your contact in the various member states, it's a good practice to get in touch with your contact points so they are aware of the project development, and you can make use of their knowledge about the program. Another important element is to be obviously consistent. Maria walked you through the various documents that are required. Often happens that you start, a project start the drafting on one document, and then project evolves over time with the discussion of your partner, and then this is reflected in Annex 1, for example, or Annex 2, but not updated in the application form online. So, make sure to rerun through the various documents so that there are no data that have one type of data in one document and another type of data in another document. We have seen previous cases where the size of the project, typically very, very, very trivially, it was indicated one size in the application form online and another size in the annexes. So we understand where it comes from. There might be discussion and evolution, but obviously this is a source of incoherence in the application submitted. So it is a potential problem in the evaluation. So try to avoid these mistakes that are easily avoidable. So as I was saying before, try to be as complete and as transparent as possible, even when you don't have the certain data, or even more when it's about data missing. Just state it clearly that this and that data is still missing at this stage for this and that reason, and if it is clear why, it's always a good thing in terms of evaluation. But of course you should have a minimum level of details regarding the technical specification of the project, so the technologies, the location, what is the business model, knowing what I said before, that there can be certain type of evolution over time. When you quote data, and typically when you set up your CBA, there is, especially in the CBA tool, a tab that is called calculation of CBA input. This is a tab that is partly structured for convenience, but you can add data there, and you can add explanation. So whenever there is a key data quoted there, it's always good practice to state where it comes from, whether it is your own calculation and you have detailed study behind it. It's good practice to send it along with. When it is about, you took the data from publicly available data, either Eurostat or IRENA or other agencies or any other sources from the Commission or elsewhere. It's important to clearly point out to the data where it comes from, and include it when it is indeed data when it's possible. Obviously, when it's not, when it's not confidential third-party data, for example, when you can, please add it to the annexes. There is a box in in the application form, you will see with Teresa later on, where you can indicate what is to be treated as a specifically confidential part, so that shouldn't be shared. But Teresa will explain. So don't hesitate to add those extra documents to your application as an annex. On the overall soundness of the CBA, it's very important to explain the assumptions. So not only just to make reference to the data, but what was your starting point. For example, when you will indicate, if you indicate the revenues, what is the assumption behind the revenue? So, for example, you may want to indicate what is the assumption behind the price trends in that for that given project. So explain, there are many modeling for that. So it's good to be as clear as possible. When it comes to the counterfactual, the same. So explain really your rationale. Really explain why it has to be, or it can be a standardized, or whether it has to be a project specific. Why? What was your reasoning behind? So explain it as much as clear as possible, because it is also based on that, on reasonability, plausibility of your assumption when it comes to, especially for the counterfactual, that the evaluation will be based on. So as I said before, when presenting the 7 elements, try to explain your calculation as much as possible. So in this specific tab I was referring to, in the calculation of the CBA input, and then you have the annex to explain it in narrative terms. So really, add explanations to the calculation that you have in the CBA tool. What was how do you get to a certain data, like the investment cost? What is the assumption behind your P50? What is the assumption behind the price you use for the GSG calculation, emission calculation? So all these are good practice, really, to make explicit your starting point and your journey to this outcome that is your final CBA. So whenever you have project-specific figures, data, whenever possible, attach any study that you have. Because one of the elements that the evaluator will check is whether this calculation can be, let's say, stress test in a way, so can be verified. And if the evaluator do not have the sources that you were starting, it's a little bit more complicated. So be as clear as possible. What are your the reference you have used to set up your cost-benefit analysis, and the one of the on the CBA of the counterfactuals. Here are a few examples, very simple one that runs through, and you will recognize some of the scenarios that some of the questions during the Q&A were depicting. So the first scenario is it's a project that is only about renewable energy generation, assuming in one country, but it can be in 2 countries, for example. And this is a potential eligible project for CBRS, provided that it's about renewable energy technology that is listed in the RED 2 or RED 3 as amended, so the Renewable Energy Directive. Then you have a scenario 2 where you have a project focusing on generation component and additional components. For example, grid component, storage component. There are limitations. Look at the website. So, for example, the grid part cannot be transmission. So there are limitations on the type of grid or the type of other component. When you talk about, for example, hydrogen, there are also limitations for that. On the storage facility, there are limitations. So it's not that any of the grid or storage component can be eligible. First of all, it needs to satisfy the criteria of being ancillary, enabled integration, and so on, as I was explaining, or we were several times explaining these elements. So they need to be something that is absolutely necessary for the regeneration part to exist, so to say, or to perform properly. And then within this frame, there are limitations on the types of components that are specified directly in the code text. But it is a possible CBRS project scenario eligible. What cannot be eligible is the two scenarios that you see now in the slide, scenario 3 and scenario 4, where a project is only about transmission or grid element. Actually, transmission is not eligible per se, but grid element, or only about storage, or only about other components. That would be the wrong program, so that would be ineligible. And the same when it is about, but it doesn't concern at all renewable energy, even though it helps climate mitigation efforts. So, for example, project about CO2 capturing, for example, that's also a wrong program, or energy efficiencies retrofitting, or anything that is not related to renewable energy generation. Teresa will explain you in details this first bullet point, wrong coordination mechanism, but be aware, be careful when you choose the cooperation mechanism in the online application. Usually 99% of the project would be a joint project, either between two EU or more than two EU member states, or between EU member state and third country. But usually it's a joint project, because starting from the fact that is a new generation renewable energy generation project that doesn't exist and needs to be built, we consider it as a joint project. Even in the case where, for example, one of the country is only contributing to, in the future, get statistical transfer. If you select, in this case, a statistical transfer instead of a joint project, there are part of the section that are not editable anymore. For example, the location or the technical aspect of the project. And of course, if you look to build a new project, that is wrong. So be aware of that, which leads to incomplete application for the section 5. And as I said, typical mistake is unverifiable calculations. For example, hard-coded calculation, so where you copy-paste a figure, a picture into the Excel sheet, and this is not verifiable. It cannot be tested, and or the source is not made explicit when you refer to data. Or you haven't justified the assumptions behind the choices of counterfactual, or the counterfactual, for example, is unrealistic. When you depict a counterfactual that it obviously will not take place, then it's often an element that is not positively assessed. So I will insist in the counterfactual because it's a typical source of problem in the evaluation. It has to be a reasonable alternative to the project. So my advice would be not to look for the perfect counterfactual that would compare exactly to the same size of the project. If that's not possible, it's preferable to have a counterfactual that is a good enough proxy of the project, but that is reasonable to assume that it may potentially take place in the reality, rather than a completely unreasonable counterfactual that we know it will never take place. It's not possible. If you have a negative delta, as Joel was explaining when explaining the tool, it could happen. It's very rare, but it could happen. But double check. because the basis, really the starting point, is to have a positive delta. If it is negative, it might be that you did something wrong in the calculation. It might be. I'm not saying it will be the case, but it might be. So double check really why you have it there. So is it because there are wrong calculation, wrong assumptions? Is it because there are some factors that you cannot capture in the methodology? Fair enough, you can explain why. Or is it because the project will have a negative NPV or a negative delta, positive NPV, but a negative delta because the counterfactual is better off in the elements of the CBA, but you know that it's so innovative. For example, you have other qualitative consideration that makes the project that you have a strong case to apply it nonetheless. Okay, these all are possibilities, but you really should be careful and have a strong case for that. So double check when you have a negative delta and see if it is because it's right to do so, and then that's your conclusion. And if not, go back to your calculation. Yeah, so these were in a nutshell few key tips from what we have seen so far. Now I give the floor to Teresa to walk you through the submission platform, which you will see it's quite easy and nice user-friendly platform, and you will see the guidance now from Teresa. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning from my side as well. I will walk you through the presentation on how you can submit your proposals via the online portal. That said, the most important before you start your application is that you create an EU login account in case you don't have one yet. You can do so following this link, but you will also find those indications on our call landing page. And you create the EU login by clicking create an account, and then you follow the instructions, and a confirmation email will be sent to you describing the next steps that are necessary. And those, when creating the EU login, will allow you to then create the CBRES application and use our submission platform. You will reach the submission platform, as I said, via our call landing page for the specific call. You see the link there, and we'll find it on our website as well. It's a CBRES submission platform. So you find that under the section how to apply and by when, where you also find the documents that have been mentioned already by my colleagues, the necessary annexes, but I will come back to this at a later stage in the presentation. So this link will directly direct you to our submission platform. And also on our website, also under this section, you will find very important guidance and the FAQs. Here you will find the user manual for the call submission, and in the next slides, I will guide you through this user manual a little bit step by step. So this presentation is actually serving as a reference for you when you're working on your application. So you can consult our presentation, but then of course also the user manual as such. So let's start with how to create an application on the CBRES submission platform. So very important is to select the right call you wish to participate in from the drop-down list, which is status call 25, which you select there. afterwards you click on create a new application, and then a window will pop up where you create the project name and the acronym and click on save. So that's actually the first step to do when you work on your application. And then in the following, you will find the different. There you will already then find your application in the list, so you can either edit it or fill in your application. I come to this later again, but once you have created your application, you can also edit it as many times as possible before the call deadline, so you can always come back to it as well. So you have then the different sections of the application, and when you click on the different sections, then you can edit its content. So those are the different sections, and we go through them now one by one. So first of all, you have the information on your project. Remember to always save the data in between, which will then move you to the next sections. Very important here, the project promoters detail. You can fill them in by clicking the add button. And then you fill in the details. It always works with a pop-up window, which then guides you through the different sections, for example, in filling in the data of a promoter. You can add as many contact points as you wish. Just always remember to click save before moving to the next section. Here, very important, we have already heard about it, is the cooperation mechanism, because here choosing or your decision here will depend also on if there are other editable sections later on in the application, and we have a different slide here. So yeah, as already said by my colleague Gianluca, usually and in most cases, what you will select here is a joint project either between member states or between member states and third countries. And this choice here has important consequences on the rest of the application form, because then you're also asked, for example, when using this cooperation mechanism, you will also ask to fill in the sections 5 and 6, which otherwise will not be editable. So yeah, remember here that only to choose the other cooperation mechanism, statistical transfer or joint support scheme, if you're not looking into building a new project. The fourth section is the project general information, and this is one of the examples which is not visible if you have clicked another cooperation mechanism. Also, this section here, very important for the evaluation, is to know where the project is planned to be located and under which implementation schedule you're planning the project to build. And here this section requires you to either map the location of the project on a GIS interface or to upload a file, a GIS map directly as a file. And what you can also do here is to export your data your GIS data once you've created it. And we go a little bit more through it in detail. You have lots of different options here. So you can specifically search for the exact location of your proposed project in the search box. And then you can directly add the infrastructure on the map, for example, using line infrastructures or polygon infrastructures. And then again, remember to click on Save before adding any additional project features. Exactly. We also have the possibility of adding a point infrastructure. So here you will see, I don't go into it in detail now, but you will see here in the presentation, but also in the user manual, how to do it exactly depending on which infrastructure you want to draw on the map. Exactly. Here's the example to be used for if you want to create a polygon infrastructure. And indeed, so once you've created it, you can also edit your infrastructure and I'll also undo it and draw it again. So there are different possibilities here. Then the section number 6 is about the project costs. Here it's as well, you edit the section by clicking on the button where a pop-up window comes again so that you can fill in the section. This is a section that has been already mentioned by Gianluca, the sensitive information section, where you can inform us if anything that you have added as information in your application is sensitive information. So remember here to click the button 7.1 yes, because then you can specify it. If you click no here, then you can also not specify if there's any sensitive information. Section 8 are the annexes presented by Maria. You have to include all the mandatory annexes, otherwise your application will not be admissible. And then of course you can also you can always submit additional annexes as well as mentioned. If there are any studies you want to refer to, you can add them as well to your application. Here you have also under the submission platform, you have the useful links that you can consult, which will bring you, for example, back to the call page and also to the DG Energy web page. So before submitting your application, you can download your application to a Word file, check that all the fields are completed, and this you can do at any time as well. So it's, for example, very useful if several promoters, member states are working on an application, because as such, only one person with one EU login can work on the application. But of course, you can at any point in time download your application and share it with other involved parties, so you can review sections together and edit those sections at a later stage if necessary. You also have the check button where fields are marked in yellow, so that you know if there are any incomplete sections which need to be reviewed before you can submit your application. Yeah, once you have once you think everything is complete, you press the submit button, and indeed very important is really allow yourself some time to complete the application. Also, if you do it very close to the call deadline, please be aware that there can be lots of traffic submitting. So please submit a few hours before the deadline, also to avoid any kind of technical issues from your side which would prevent you to submit the application. A green message will then confirm to you that you have indeed submitted the application, and you can then close the submission window. And as I've mentioned before, you can amend and view your application as many times. I mean, view in any case, but also amend and edit the application as many times as you want, but before the call deadline. Then you can always come back to it, can change something again, can edit something, and do that before the call closes. But of course, you can also decide to withdraw your application and, for example, start a new one. That option is also possible. And then, I would give the floor back to Anke to close our presentation.
Thank you so much, and thanks a lot to all the colleagues for all the presentations, and we hope interesting and complete information for you. And now we have another Q&A session, the last one for this info day today, and Gianluca will address the questions.
Thank you, Anka. Indeed, we open the last section of the day. So in case you have still some more questions, of course, feel free to use this last slot. We have one question on the role of the national contact point. So what role does the national contact point have in helping the applicants compared to the Commission and CINEA? So yeah, well, for us, they're really there to facilitate the contact with the member state level. In particular, I would presume that private operator may find it particularly useful because indeed you may not have the right contact to start the conversation about whether the project can be supported and there can be a future cooperation agreement around the project. So it's an entry point. They are usually working in the competent ministry, so they are there to help you to really start the conversation around the cooperation. They are not, as far as we know, they are not a technical assistance type of service, so they are not there to review or help you drafting the application, but there might be some that are more, let's say, more enter into the content than other. It depends really on the member state, but that's not a role to review and to help you really on the application form, but it's more on the national side, and they can give you important information on the wider context, on the legislative framework regarding the feasibility of your project, and so on and so forth. So that's roughly their role. So in question about the language, in case you have attached documents that are not in English, whether they need to be translated before uploading, no, you can actually use any of the EU official language. We encourage strongly the use of English because it really facilitates as well the evaluation, puts in the same level playing field, but you are not obliged to do so. We can take any EU language and translate internally, but obviously in a way it's always better to use as a starting point the English as it is for all the other applications. So we really encourage to use it, but there might be some documents that are not in English, and you will not be disqualified for that. Project will be fully assessed in its entirety. Yeah, so a question on the grid elements that can be eligible as an additional component. So within the frame of the condition that we were mentioning before, so the facilitate integration, be integral part and be ancillary. The call text underlines that electricity transmission infrastructure and related component are not eligible. As well as electricity interconnector lines and related component. Now, what can be eligible if it falls within the condition I just mentioned is the grid connection of a renewable energy generation installation to the grid. So the part that connects from the installation to the grid, or so in case of an onshore installation. In case of an offshore installation, the grid connection of offshore renewable energy installation to the transmission grid, only if the connection is owned by the RES generation developer and does not cumulate with the Union Financial Assistance through the PCI, PMI window. So here it's really, you have to make clearly the distinction, and there is a notion of ownership. So in case it is the connection, the grid connection, that leads to the transmission grid in offshore wind, in offshore project wind, but also other technology, is owned by the RES generation developer. That is eligible in the current call. So these are the type of grid elements that could be included in this call. You have it in the call text. In the call page, you have it made explicit. Okay. Yes, we're a good reminder about the feedback survey. So you will receive the link. It doesn't take much, maximum 5 minutes, even less. But it's very precious, really, for us and for future applicants. So if you have found this info day useful, it's also thanks to your predecessors that gave us interesting feedback. So really make use of it. Tell us what you find it interesting, what you find it too lengthy, too short, whether you have any suggestion of changing the format. Anything is really welcome, because it really helps us to develop further the product and the service we provide. So really play to use the feedback survey. It's the time, and it's really the time to do it. We are a little bit early, so you had planned until 12:30 we assume. So you absolutely have 5 minutes to take your feedback survey through. So thanks in advance for this. I'm just looking whether we have some more questions, but not for the moment. So actually, we can close this info day. You wanna have a closing word?
Yes, with pleasure. Thank you so much for all the participants who joined us online. Is there?
We have a new question.
Yeah. Okay. There's a new question, so I'm not closing it. I will let Gianluca close actually by first answering the questions and then having the last word.
Sorry for that, Anka, but indeed we take the opportunity to have a last question. So why are statistical transfer projects not expected to be new renewable plants? Is financing not possible without energy transmission between member states? So maybe, yeah, it's a very good question, because it allows me to clarify a point I made earlier. So it's not that statistical transfer projects are not expected to build new renewable plants. Is that by default, when you have a new project, new renewable plants, we ask you to use to make use of the joint project field, so joint cooperation, joint project cooperation in the field that Teresa was explaining before, because otherwise you would block the sections where you have to explain all the location, the technology, etc. Why? Because in principle, the idea of statistical transfer was conceived to be sort of an ex-post agreement between member states to transfer the share. But in new project, there is associated statistical transfer as part of the cooperation mechanism. So it's not that are two exclusive. And financing not possible without energy transmission between member states. No, that's also, and it's maybe something that was not clear in my previous comments. So yes, it is possible that a project is financed without that there is a transmission of energy between two member states. Where there are distant countries, there is no transmission of energy, but there is new energy injected to the grid thanks to the new installation that the project has created. So there is new energy, and the energy may not be transmitted to the other member state because it's a distant member state that would chip in only for purpose of the statistical transfer. So I hope it's clear. On this specific topic, there is a Q&A question on the FAQ document available for download in the website. So you can maybe complete with the reading, and in case it's not clear, we can further elaborate after the info day in the Q&A in case we see it that there are questions on that. Thank you, and then I give the floor to Anka for the closing remarks.
Thanks a lot, Gianluca, and thanks a lot for all your questions. It shows that you were really listening to us, and there was an interest in the call. Thank you so much for that. So without further ado, and with due thanks to all my colleagues who participated in the organization of the info session and presented here, let me wish you a nice rest of the day, and please follow all the information and all the relevant information available online as well that you have received when you prepare your submissions. Thank you so much. Goodbye.